Good evening, I'm Brian Stewart. Tonight in a full edition documentary, we'll examine a sad chapter in Canadian history, one that has come to light only recently in a new book. It's about the Butterbox babies of Nova Scotia. During the 1930s and 1940s, the ideal maternity home was a haven for young women to give birth. But what happened to some of those babies continues to haunt people to this day. One of them is Bette Cahill. She was a reporter for CBC Halifax when she first heard about the story. She took a leave of absence from her job to conduct research and write a book about the Butterbox babies. The Journal's Lynn Whittam has this report on the remarkable story she uncovered.
To have babies buried in butter boxes, in vacant lots and open fields, there's something very obscene about that.
And they put them in butter boxes, which they came with the grocery order, and they buried them.
There, by the grace of God, I could have been dead and buried underneath or in the plots, wherever they had. I could have been a Butterbox baby.
The tranquil south shore of Nova Scotia. The soothing landscape belies a dark past that's rarely mentioned and for most gratefully forgotten. It was a time when among happy vacationers pouring out of Chester's now obsolete train station, you could almost spot her, a young woman, head held down in shame, slouching from the burden in her body. She would come to East Chester seeking secrecy and absolution because she had committed a most unpardonable sin, getting pregnant outside of marriage. To cope, hundreds of young women made their lonely way to the ideal maternity home in East Chester, William and Lila Young's promised refuge. There's not much left of the ideal maternity home. This is where William and Lila Young lived. The rest of the home burned down 30 years ago. But the fire didn't wipe out the painful memories and the disturbing questions. A new book by Halifax journalist Bette Cahill alleges the home was the site of appalling mistreatment and neglect of women and children, a black market in babies, and possible infanticide. It seems incredible today, but a half-century ago, there were few choices for young, unmarried, pregnant women. Author Bette Cahill says the story of the ideal maternity home is the story of society's attitudes toward women and children in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s.
The ultimate humiliation for a woman was to have a baby out of wedlock. It was just an unbelievable sin. A woman who became pregnant and who wasn't married became an outcast. Even worse, her baby wasn't wanted. Families did whatever they could to hide the pregnancy from neighbors and relatives, and in some cases members of their own family.
The Great Depression was longer and harder in Nova Scotia than in most other parts of Canada. Work was scarce, money even more so. Few people needed another mouth to feed, but abortion was illegal, and you could be arrested for buying a condom. World War II sent the birth rate skyrocketing in Halifax. It was the last stop for sailors on the way to the front. For many, a last desperate chance to forget what was ahead. Local women were left behind to deal with their pregnancies. Even if they married, the husbands often died at war, leaving expectant mothers alone to cope with the high price of parenthood. Whatever the circumstances, it was always the woman who bore the burden of birth, as if she had conceived the child on her own. Lila Young saw an opportunity in dispossessed pregnant women. She was born and raised in Nova Scotia, a seemingly devout member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. In the 1920s, she met William at a church meeting and later married him. The two left Nova Scotia for Chicago, where William trained to be a chiropractor and Lila to be a midwife. They returned to Nova Scotia to open the maternity home.
I think when the business started in the early days, there's a possibility that their intentions were good, that they really did attempt to provide a service that was badly needed in its day. As the business grew, especially during the war years, I think that the money was hard and fast, and it was big profit, big bucks, and they just got caught up in it.
The ideal maternity home was about 60 kilometers outside of Halifax, close enough to get to, but far enough away to guard a girl's secret. Lila wrote her own publicity brochure, which underscored the home's chief selling point.
Dame Gossip has sent many young lives to perdition after ruining them socially that might have been bright stars in society and a power in the world of usefulness had they been shielded from gossip when they made a mistake.
To board the girls and deliver the babies, the Youngs charged from $300 to $500, a huge amount in those Depression years. Most women didn't work outside the home, but if they did manage to find a job, they brought in at most $8 a week. If they couldn't pay up, the Youngs had other methods for compensation.
It was shocking the lengths that they went to blackmail and coerce people into paying the bills. One was to blackmail the fathers of the baby or the families by threatening to expose them. But the other method was to force the girls to work in the home, and they worked hard. I mean, they scrubbed floors, and you know, there were huge numbers of meals to prepare every day, and the laundry and all the diapers. And they had to work fairly hard to work off these bills. And she would keep them there for a long time, sometimes more than a year and a half, before they could actually pay off a bill.
The Youngs brochure advised,
They may cut the cost right in half simply by doing light duties, and at the same time keep physically fit and the mind occupied and off one's troubles. We strongly advise doing light duties during expectancy, but the choice is yours.
Still, it seemed like a bargain. The Youngs promised the comforts of home and the professional care of a hospital.
Mothers greatly appreciate the fact that this work is directed by a female obstetrician who for years has conducted the work with remarkable success.
It was close by, and she was a woman, and I thought she was a doctor.
Violet Eisenhower was a beautiful young bride, one of the few local married girls who chose to have her baby at the home. Violet still remembers vividly that day more than 50 years ago. It was during a very painful and difficult birth that Violet learned Lila was not a doctor.
I couldn't have the child without a doctor, and she refused to call Dr. Swigger, and I just figured that was going to be the end of me and I said, "Oh, Lila," I said, "are you going to let me die?" And with that, she started to cry, and then she started to pray. And I really went into a panic then, because I knew she wasn't going to do anything for me.
Cahill spent hundreds of hours in the archives searching out similar stories. They were in the headlines, tales of horrible medical malpractice at the home. In the case of one other unfortunate girl, the Youngs were charged with manslaughter, but were found not guilty despite damning medical evidence.
It was just horrific, the description of the baby. And of course, the mother, within 24 hours, the mother was hemorrhaging. And it was only when they lost all hope of ever being able to save the mother that they decided to rush her to a Halifax hospital. But of course, this young woman, she bled to death on the way.
The Youngs' medical mistakes left them with a problem: what to do with the babies' bodies. The solution was in the kitchen. The local creamery delivered butter to the home in wooden boxes. The boxes were free and the perfect size for a tiny body. Bette Cahill spoke with the Youngs' handyman, who had a beautiful young bride, one of the few local married girls who chose to have her baby at the home. Violet still remembers vividly that day more than 50 years ago. It was during a very painful and difficult birth that Violet learned Lila was not a doctor.
I couldn't have the child without a doctor, and she refused to call Dr. Swigger, and I just figured that was going to be the end of me and I said, "Oh, Lila," I said, "are you going to let me die?" And with that, she started to cry, and then she started to pray. And I really went into a panic then, because I knew she wasn't going to do anything for me.
Cahill spent hundreds of hours in the archives searching out similar stories. They were in the headlines, tales of horrible medical malpractice at the home. In the case of one other unfortunate girl, the Youngs were charged with manslaughter, but were found not guilty despite damning medical evidence.
It was just horrific, the description of the baby. And of course, the mother, within 24 hours, the mother was hemorrhaging. And it was only when they lost all hope of ever being able to save the mother that they decided to rush her to a Halifax hospital. But of course, this young woman, she bled to death on the way.
The Youngs' medical mistakes left them with a problem: what to do with the babies' bodies. The solution was in the kitchen. The local creamery delivered butter to the home in wooden boxes. The boxes were free and the perfect size for a tiny body. Bette Cahill spoke with the Youngs' handyman, who has since died. He told her that he had buried the dead babies in butter boxes.
He was really just one of the workers on the property, and he was paid $1 a day, sometimes $1.50, to take these babies, put them in butter boxes, and bury them. And there were half a dozen men over the years who were hired to do that.
No.
Violet Eisenhower doesn't believe her baby was in a butter box, even though Lila tried to convince her otherwise.
Well, the baby weighed 8 pounds and 6 ounces. She wasn't sick. And she was with me, like I said, 14 days. And the day we were going to come home, the baby and me, Mrs. Young came in that morning. She said, "Mrs. Eisenhower, I got bad news for you. Your baby died last night." Well, it was a shock to me. She gave me a white pill and I went to sleep. And my people come down, and she said to me, she said, "I don't want you to look at the baby," she said, "because you're too ill." So my people come down, they wasn't sick, and she wouldn't show the baby to them either. They want to see the baby, and she refused to show it. She said they'd see it at the day of the funeral, and she insisted upon conducting the funeral herself. Say, we had nothing to do with it. She took it right out of our hands, and that made me suspicious.
Your dad tried to see what was inside the coffin, did he?
He wanted to, but she wouldn't allow it.
How was it that you couldn't just lift up the...
It's all screwed down. Couldn't lift it up. And so that's the way it went in the ground. And my father and my husband was going to exhume the body that night. They were going up to exhume it, and my mother told them it wasn't legal, that they shouldn't do that, so it never was done.
You don't think your baby was in that casket?
No, I don't, because if she was in there, why wouldn't the woman open it? Well, that was a funny funeral, don't you think? She wouldn't open it for anybody. So, I have to think what I think, under the circumstances. And they stayed up there by the grave until it was all covered over. They wouldn't leave until it was all covered over.
The other girls in the home said that around the time the baby disappeared, that there was a couple in the home looking for a baby, and it was a baby girl they wanted, and Violet was the only baby girl in the home. And so it's, it's very suspicious. I think after listening to her story that her baby is alive and out there somewhere.
Michael Ryder was born at the home. His mother didn't want to give him up.
She decided to go there, to have me there. And because her economic condition was not a strong one at the time, she found it necessary to go into domestic service. And so after I was born, left me at the home, prepaid me for approximately a year for them to take care of me. And when she went back to get me, they said that I was gone, that I had been adopted out, and also that she had signed papers allowing that to happen, which she swears up and down that never occurred. She went back home. The truth of the matter is, I was still there, because she came for me when I was 13 months old, and I didn't leave the home until I was 16 months old, so they actually lied to her. I was there. When she did, in a sense, make waves go back and trying to get more information, they basically told her that if she could come up with approximately $12,000 Canadian, they would be able to get me back.
Soon the reputation of South Shore, Nova Scotia would spread. A vacation playground becomes known as the baby capital of the Eastern Seaboard.
The environment. Products you choose do not go unnoticed by it. Making good environmental choices isn't easy. We can help. We examine products scientifically, impartially, and put our mark on those that are less harmful. Look for the environmental choice symbol on a growing number of products if you're in the market for a better world.
Sure, we'd like to invest. But with what? I mean, we don't have $10,000 to put into something. Besides, we don't even know the first thing about investing. Well, what's an investment company going to do for us? You know we need to invest. Question is where?
With a luxury car like the new J30 from Infiniti, you may be expected to drive with a certain decorum in public. What you do behind closed doors, however, is your own business. The new Infiniti J30 makes you want to take up driving again, doesn't it?
By helping others to help themselves, we can make a difference today and for generations to come. Oxfam Canada, working for change.
The South Shore of Nova Scotia is simply beautiful. Sheltered coves, a rugged coastline, and colorful fishing boats. A pretty picture and a magnet for tourists. Throughout the years, Chester has been a vacation spot for wealthy Americans. But in the 30s and 40s, some Americans came to spend money on more than a holiday. They came to buy babies.
Many elaborate homes in this world are merely houses without the prattle and play of children in them to add joy and happiness. If yours is a childless home, or if you have been entrusted with means and ability, why not adopt a lovely baby from the ideal maternity home?
What did you learn from your adoptive mother about the circumstances of your being brought into her family?
She had to pay $10,000 U.S. To a lawyer down in New Jersey. And I understand that at some point my parents were approached again after that asking for a contribution to the ideal maternity home, which I believe they paid.
How long did it take you to get...
Florence Ryder, Michael's adoptive mother, was too old to adopt legally in New Jersey. In 1945, she recalls picking him from an unruly pack of ideal babies.
They were very, wild, running around, screaming. There was no discipline, nobody taking care of them. They just did what they wanted to do. And as I walked in and walked past the crib, and with my friend, I said to her, "Isn't he adorable?"
So there's no regrets over dealing with that home?
No, because I felt they gave me what I wanted, and I certainly was happy with Michael all my life, and I'm very happy with the way he turned out, because he's really an awfully nice guy.